welcome back to the channel. This is another one of my watch list videos that'll chronicle or diary of what I've been watching or have watched over the past week or so. And I thought I might do it today a bit sooner than I normally would because it's probably still going to be a long one. And in keeping with most weeks, there's a bit of a theme. I have watched on YouTube this week film blogger Sam's top 25 videos of the 2010s, 2010s. A really good video which I'd like to do a response to, but when I did that I realised I haven't seen very many movies from 2015 or so, so I thought I may rectify that by looking at whatever streaming services there was at the time. Coupled with this, one of my absolute favourite video series at the moment on YouTube is Solitary Ronin's top 150 films of all time, not in any ranked order because he's not in it, which he breaks into 15 film chunks each week, and I adore it. And again, in order to be able to do a response video to that, I feel like I'm missing 5 complete years of cinema, which I don't know why it bothers me, because I'm missing about 100 years before that as well in some way, shape or form. There's no way you can possibly see every film. So Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever other streaming services I could get my hands on, I started to look at some of the somewhat great or well considered films from that time. So first up is Mad Max Fury Road. I'm not a great lover of the Mad Max series at all, which is one of the reasons that I haven't seen it up to this point. This George Miller remake is very stylized, like George Miller's stuff is, and as such definitely has a look and a style. I was surprised, having played the video game adaptation of this film, how much of the iconography was exactly the same, and how I could tell an awful lot about what was happening in the world from just the video game. The story doesn't really focus on Max. Tom Hardy's character is pretty much a silent protagonist for most of the movie, in that he doesn't speak, but the heroine of the film is really Charlize Theron's character Furiosa, who takes a tanker full of fuel, I think. I wasn't sure what was fuel or water at the start, but neither. Both are finite and precious resources from the Citadel, or the stronghold, where it is all very tightly controlled. Water is given to the people very frugally. They fight over it to try and get even a drop of water in order to help her survive. Same with fuel. And even the breeding of children is controlled, as the ruler of that area has assigned women to basically carry or mother children for him in the hope that he will get a male heir. She takes those people with the fuel and takes them away to, well, that's for the story to tell you or take you. For a good 2/3 of the movie, I just was not bothered very much at all. I will say the last third of it pulls it together, makes it a very worthwhile and great watch. But it is more style over substance, I think, to an awful lot of that. And the style is very good. I mean, it's a beautifully shot movie. Some of the choreography of the fight sequences, etc., with the big sweeping booming arms to get from vehicle to vehicle, I think is very, very cleverly done. Lots of great ideas on the screen, but ultimately, a film that until that last section was kind of just drumming along. I kind of think it was a more expensive version of Hell Comes to Frogtown, wasn't it? I mean, it's a lot of the same ideas and themes, and nobody's talking about Hell Comes to Frogtown in very hallowed terms. In fact, I think you could argue that Roddy Piper, give me that one, was a more dynamic lead than Tom Hardy, even though they weren't trying to do the same character, etc. But they missed a bit of that, the charisma, I think, in the first part of that movie. Next film that I watched was an absolute stonker of a film, which was Ex Machina. The story of Donald Gleeson, who's hired by Oscar Isaac's character to come to his secret facility that's hidden away, that seems to be locked down like Fort Knox, to carry out the Turing test. Oscar Isaacs has developed an AI, and the Turing test basically means that you cannot discern the difference between an AI robot and that of a human. So he has created this AI character, which you've got to remember yourself isn't actually a robot. This is the magic of movies, so it's actually human played. So it should pass the Turing test. It's a human, but never get me wrong, it's meant to be a very lifelike human. And Donald Gleeson gets to know her and starts to question about the role of man, etc. in this world, just like every other film about AI seems to go into. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke set this up many years ago, with this in a similar vein, and man, it bleeds into Westworld. It pulls an awful lot of inspiration from a lot of places, and ends up being a very powerful and impactful movie, and one that I wholeheartedly recommend. Next one up was last year's Oscar winner, Parasite, Bong Joon-ho's 2019 Oscar-winning masterpiece. So the first foreign film to ever win the Best Picture Oscar, and I'm always filled with trepidation coming to watch a film like this, because it's already hyped. I didn't know what it was about, but you can't help but see some of the trailers and start to form an opinion, and then when people tell you it's brilliant, etc., it's hard not to go into it with some sort of preconceptions. But at its heart, Parasite tells the story of two families, one that's poor and one that's rich. And I do this with my hands because even the iconography in the film represents that they are on different levels. The poor family lives at a sub-street level. Their windows, they're only rolling on the top of their house, look out at street level, so they live below the street. Whereas the rich family live up on the hills. You have to ascend hills, you've got to go up steps. Even when you get in the house, you've still got more steps as it goes. It's always an idea that you're always rising to this peak or pinnacle. And Parasite is a very fine film. I mean, it's hard to say whether it's the best film of the year, because I don't think two people could ever agree on what is the best film that they've seen that year wholeheartedly. But it's as good as any to win a Best Picture Oscar, in my opinion. Things that strike me about it, I mean, it's very much still a Korean film, which I'm glad to see that it wasn't a foreign movie that conformed to a certain Western ideal or anything. I've watched some, not terrific amounts of Korean and Asian films, but enough to know that things are likely to take a turn in the film. And when they take a turn, you embrace them. They're part of what's there. My wife watched it beside me, seen less of it, and when things did take a turn, she was shocked. I mean, it fed into how powerful and impactful that movie was for her. I just smiled from ear to ear because I was glad to see that it stuck to genre, so to speak. So the build-up to it is that the son of the family, of the poor family, gets a job as a translator, or an English teacher, really, rather, to the daughter of the rich family. And in turn, the poor family are pretty much grifters, so they make money wherever they can, and he sees an opportunity to get the rest of his family in there working in some ways and basically sponge off this rich family in some way, shape or form. And that is all going great until there's a knock on the door, ringing the bell one night, and one of the ex-employees of the house comes home. And that's where we'll stop the exposition, because I don't want to spoil anything after that, other than to say that is the moment that a switch flips in the film and it becomes a very different type of movie than what it was beforehand. So, really glad I've seen Parasite. I'll look forward to seeing it again. Definitely another watch of a movie. Well scripted, beautifully directed, like stunningly beautiful film that uses, its imagery very, very effectively and to good purpose on it. And if nothing else, more people get to see Korean films or see world cinema, then it can only be seen as a plus. What is a pluff anyway? I didn't just watch streaming service films this week. I watched a second run release, and that was Distant Journey. Distant Journey is a 1948 Czech film that, as you can probably see from the cover, tells the story of, well, that period in time, which is just the Second World War. And it tells the story of the Jewish population living in Czechoslovakia that were herded and put into labour camps initially, and then on to concentration camps. And like with most of those movies, it's very difficult to watch. It's hard to believe that man did that to man. The evil that we can portray on each other. And I think it's a very stark reminder to just be mindful of that at all times. And that our thoughts can lead us down to very, very poor paths and poor choices that there are. It tells the story primarily of a young lady who is, at the start of the movie, is asked to be married by a Gentile. So a non-Jewish person who deeply loves her and wants to keep hold of her, but it tells the story of her and then her extended family and how they are treated in that period of time, both being herded away and then split up, and ultimately how that all resolves itself. It is incredibly difficult to watch. Not so much that the The film itself is harrowing and graphic. There's rather, I was caught out by it. There's these little pictures, so the screen shrinks down. You get a picture-in-picture down in the corner, and there's archive footage put in the background, so that the film kind of is on hold while you see the layout of Nazi propaganda and what was going on in the world at the time play out. And yeah, really an interesting watch from start to finish. Again, impossible to score, because I don't know if you're necessarily meant to be entertained by that kind of movie, but I think it's also important to watch. The release has a documentary, 2 short films on it, has the booklet, usual second run release, just terrific, and definitely one you should definitely check out and watch, especially considering it was made in 1948. 3 years after the end of the Second World War. Brexit happened in 2016. I don't see the Brexit movie coming out at the moment. I know it's still in the works, etc. But it shows you how time passes quickly at that stage in life. And that is another one. I watched a Criterion film. I watched it on the Criterion channel. It's due to just come out soon on Blu-ray in the US, but not here. And it is Tokyo Olympiad. In what should be Olympic season, Tokyo Olympiad is the Olympic film made by Kon Ichikawa of the events of the 1964 Olympics, the first Asian Olympics. And interestingly, that Akira Kurosawa was supposed to do this film instead of Ichikawa, but he asked for too much money. He wanted control of the closing ceremony, etc. So we are left with what is apparently considered one of the best sports documentary films of all time. Now, I have no frame of reference for that. I haven't seen enough sports documentaries to comment on that, although I have seen some of the other Olympic films, and this one's very different in style from what I've seen of those. It's very much in the athlete's face or on the ground level, and trying to get into not just how they felt or their emotions that they went through at the time, that lots of films like it have done, but also into the environment in which they were competing. So massive floodlights weren't a thing back in those days. Everything was kind of dark outside of what they were competing on, very much to that level. And even things like the long jump and the pole vault, which were done very much at night. The long jump was also done in the wet, which made it much more difficult to compete in, and it makes the sounds of everything that's going along that much more impactful that's there. It's only when the athletics part finishes momentarily, and when we go into the other sports, the wrestling, the swimming, the shooting, the fencing, etc., that it starts to open up, and we start to get into the range of competitors that we do. And then it all culminates in about a half-hour section of epilogue at the end, so to speak, where it looks at the marathon being the final event. And that could have been its own film in its own right. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. How we looked at the competitors, how they struggled through it, the kind of help and support they had, and the brilliance of the overall winner, and how deserving and far ahead he was of everybody else that was in the competition at that time. A fascinating look at the Olympics, and one that made me kind of pine for the Olympics, as I'm a bit of an Olympics fan in general. And that leaves me with my last 2 movies, which were back on streaming services. And these 2 films, while they may not seem like it, definitely are linked in my head, both because I watched them in similar time to each other, but also because their underlying themes, I think, are the same. The first one's Booksmart. Booksmart tells the story of 2 girls who are 2 bookworms in school. They've done everything right in school. They have done all their homework. They've attended every class. They've come out great grades, and they've got into the university of their choice. It's all a victory. But just as they're about to graduate, they realise, or one of them realises, so did a lot of other kids. A lot of kids that lived their life properly, or that not properly, should I say, or not to the same standards that they set themselves. They had fun. And so they set out for their last day to have fun, go to the graduation parties, or pre-graduation parties, should I say, and take involved in that. And it is, I think it's a very funny movie. It's directed by Olivia Wilde, in what I just think is fantastic. In fact, it's the type of movie I'd love to show to my younger daughters, except it has some of the most overt sexual references in it that are populated the whole way through it, that make it so that I can't really do that. But a lot of the other ideals and the styles, I think, are very powerful for young women to see about understanding yourself, understanding your role. One of the main things that I think comes out at the end of it is the fact that you go to school with people, you spend a lot of time with them, but you very rarely listen to people outside of your own small circle, and you very rarely get the chance to really get to know people. and get to know people well and their motivations, and rather than their public image, their public persona, what is behind that? And that leads me on to the next film, which was Green Book. Now, I've heard that Green Book is not very much liked. Green Book tells the story of Dr. Don Shirley, a piano player who's going on a tour of the Deep South, where he's been paid to play at the rich and famous white people in the Deep South in a time in the late 50s, early 60s, it seems like, something like that. And he's driven around by a New York Italian driver who seems to have been picked to do it because he can handle the rough and tumble that might come along with that at the stage. And I thought Green Book was terrific. I really like films that are about injustice, and especially racial injustice, because again they make me consider just how unfair some life. Back to the same ideas of Distant Journey. It's a constant reminder of things just being unfair all the time. And while I live in a country where we have our own parallels of injustice and how that affects, and how a lot of people just don't see the injustice that is there, or the inequality that is right in front of their eyes. They just see other inequalities and point to that rather than looking close to home. And I think that's an incredibly powerful thing. But Don Shirley's character makes assumptions about his driver's character, Viggo Mortensen's character, and Viggo Mortensen makes assumptions vice versa. So some of the assumptions that he makes of Don Shirley as being a black piano player is that he loved fried chicken. Man never had fried chicken beforehand. He gives him some fried chicken to like. But also about how people treat Don Shirley, because the story Green Book is based on the fact that there was a book called the Green Book that was given to Negro travellers in the Deep South, so of places that they could stay, places that were approved for them to stay. And the fact that he was the driver, Don Shirley was the star, and he had to stay in some really despicable places, whereas the driver got to stay in much nicer places, was just very, very harrowing. And Don Shirley sees the driver's character as beneath him as well. You know, he sees him as being uncouth. He sees him as being under him, as being, you know, needs education. Driver sees Don Shirley as being stuck up, as being tight ass, and needs to let go a little. And the story is very much about how they adjust each other's perceptions of each other outside of race, because there's definitely a racial undertone throughout the entire movie, but it's not everything that there is in here. And I think Green Book was my favourite movie that I watched this week. I mean, they were all great movies in certain ways. None of them I would have scored below a 4 this week. I think that they're all fantastic. If you looked at my Letterboxd profile, you'll see that was very much the case. But Green Book spoke to me in a way, and again, it won the Best Picture Oscar. I don't know what was that. I can't even think what was up against it that year. A lot of people seem to be unhappy about it, but that's just awards for you. I kind of thought I would like Green Book before I went to watch it, because its themes are ones that I often do like in films. So that's what I've been watching this week. Some pickups this week. Again, back to Solitary Ronin's video from watching from his top 150 movies. He made me pick up The Lobster, Yorgos Lanthimos film, which I hadn't seen, and I didn't actually realise that this existed. But there is a Studio Canal releasing the Vintage Classics range of The Third Man, a movie that I have seen before, but I can tell you almost nothing about. I watched it maybe 10 years ago with a wife. I think it was on Netflix at the time, but it's not anymore. But that's a very nice release that I picked up. So I plan to make my way through both those releases at the time. And if you haven't checked out that series, you really should, because I think it's terrific. Thanks very much for watching. Take care of yourselves. I'll speak to you all soon, and look forward to hearing what you've all been watching in the comments. Take care. All the best. Bye.